Good morning, everybody. You're going to see Acts 7, which I taught last week. Today I'm going to teach Acts 8. You'll see that before you see this. I didn't put a note on the post that over the last few weeks when I was talking about various friends that had experienced police abuse for many years out here, but there were some that the abuse had to do with other relationships, whether they were forced relationships or consensual with an officer. So they just found, I got a text last night, they found that friend dead. His name was Danny Gill. Now I don't know how Danny died, because I got a text like a week ago that said they couldn't find him. Another friend actually texted me. They couldn't find him. Now, I don't know. I know he was sick. And I spent some time with Danny the last few weeks. And one day I felt I was in front of the infamous bells, where they don't want you to be. And I was sitting with Danny one day. And he used to be in my Bible studies that I did. And he'd bring his Bible out. And I had talks with Danny. And I think he wanted to hang out with me that day. Because I was there for about an hour maybe with Danny Gill. And then I was going to go see if the guys were at the park and all. And I think Danny just wanted to go with me, but I wasn't sure, so I didn't take him. Okay, I'll try to be brief on these rollouts. When I do teach Acts 8, some of you might question, John, you've been giving us you've been teaching us that the courthouse in the first century Rome was sort of like the local law enforcement, and where do you get that from? Well, we understand things just from studying the culture and history of the time, but for my preacher friends that are just, read scripture, which is very good, but you don't study maybe other things, most of you are going to be familiar with the beginning of this chapter, which is Saul, who, chapter 9, gets converted, becomes Paul. But Saul, in the beginning of Acts 8, is going into house to house, illegally arresting the believers and taking them off to jail. Okay? So his function in that particular capacity as a Pharisee was to violate law, to illegally arrest. Okay? That's how Acts 8 begins, and most of my preacher friends are familiar. And I debated last night whether I would watch that Netflix series again, which is called Making of a Murderer. And I commented on it before, because if you want to see corruption and the deceptiveness and how those that are in authority who are corrupt use it for their own means, that's an excellent documentary to watch. It's older now, it's been out for a while, but it's a 10-part series. So, Joe, should I watch it? But Stephen Avery, I'll comment quick. And the first part I watched again, and I've forgotten some of it, but there was a man many years ago who raped a woman on a beach, and it's Manitowoc County. Manitowoc County, I forget now, a Midwest state, famous case. And when the man raped the woman on the beach, there was a lady that was dating a sheriff's deputy in that county. And the lady was a cousin to a man by the name of Stephen Avery. And she did not like Stephen Avery. And she supposedly made a lot of rumors about him, and they were cousins who did not like each other. And at one point, because she said a lot of rumors about Stephen Avery, her cousin, he ran her off the road with his car. And this is a very good documentary. It's got all the legitimate footage. So they were out to get him. And the way they got him was when the woman was raped. This was, watched it last night. The cousin, who was dating a sheriff, they went to the woman and said, it sounds like a man by the name of Stephen Avery. Right from the start, that entire system was used to carry out personal vendetta. And what they did was they had a detective, this is all documented, And the detective pulled up an old arrest photo of Stephen Avery because he had like minor skirmishes like maybe some of my friends had. And the detective drew a sketch, this is all now known, from the old arrest photo of Stephen Avery. Then they took the sketch and they also showed the picture of Stephen Avery to the woman who was raped. But it's well known that when a woman is raped, it's a traumatic experience. And if they show you a picture of somebody and tell you it's him, you will then begin to believe that. Now, Stephen Avery went to trial, and this all started because the sheriff's wife or girlfriend wanted to get somebody. And so the whole system, all the millions of dollars, famous case, with one person's personal vendetta. That's how it started. And during the trial, Mr. Avery had many witnesses that he was not there that day. He was working at his father's junkyard. Many witnesses, many witnesses, 20 witnesses. No, they did this, they did that. He wasn't there. They arrested him and found him convicted. And you listen to his father speak on the documentary and the mother. And they all knew their son was innocent simply because he was working at the junkyard that day. Now, as this case unfolds, because I watched it before, the local law enforcement knew that somebody else committed the crime. It was a man by the name of Allen. They knew this. They knew this. This comes out later in the documentary. And another law enforcement agency from that region called and said, we have the man that actually raped the woman that you have now convicted Stephen Avery. And the local law enforcement, the sheriff, said, no, we want to go with Mr. Avery for other reasons. Very amazing. So Stephen Avery did 18 years in prison. They challenged, appealed. They finally got DNA, and the DNA was from a man by the name of Allen. But the local law enforcement knew that Allen raped that woman. This is what comes out later. And finally, this is the first part of it, but I forgot, like I said, that the whole reason they targeted him is because the law enforcement see that as their own little tool, sort of like Saul and Acts 8, which I'll teach you in a while, just arresting people because this is my tool. I'll violate every law, even if it's murdering of a person, which has happened so many times in this country. And eventually Avery gets exonerated after 18 years in prison. But they target him and his family. Now he's back in prison today for a murder of a girl. Now look, when I watched the rest of it, I remember, I guarantee you, this all came out in court. They moved the vehicle to the property of the... It's almost like what you begin to see when you watch these is, I don't know about Danny Gill's death, but when you know that this stuff goes on, I just posted a link. You'll see it before you see this video. I'll roll them out today. But I just posted a link that came out in the Corpus paper. The police chief in a city called Taft, which is right around here, just got fired because he told a homeless guy, leave town or I'll arrest you. You know how many times that has happened here? You've had assaults, batteries. Albert Hoffman was threatened he'd be murdered. The threat was leave town or disappear, I'll make you disappear. I mean, there's been people... I was surprised that the Taft police chief got fired for simply saying that. But here in this county, Nueces. And also I'll mention the sad case of Fuqua. My children went to school in Flower Bluff with, he was an athletic kid, he did trail running and all, but he was shot a couple months ago, right, coming back into Corpus Christi, and the media said, you know, they didn't know, but the case made it to the Corpus Christi paper the other day, because the parents, his vehicle was shot multiple times. They found him dead on the side of the road. And the parents thought surely they'd find out, you know, they'd solve that. Well, the detectives Now, I feel bad now for this family. I wonder if this family is going to be targeted, because the parents of the dead boy finally went to the media, and the Corpus Caller ran a paper article on it, because the detectives had told the parents it's a cold case. After 2 months, it's a cold case, meaning they don't have enough evidence. The question now is, we had detectives, this came out in many of the court cases with Skirka and all, who had suborned perjury in the Hayden case, and you had detectives that were shown to be coercing and committing crimes. Now, all of these detectives are still fully on the force. There's zero, Mr. Skirka, still all the things he done that came out in court. There's zero accountability here. Now, maybe Mark Gonzalez, the new DA, maybe he'll begin to investigate CCPD. But in the Fuqua case, they said it's a cold case, and the parents obviously won some resolution to the death of their son. So they went to the paper, which was probably a mistake, because so the question should be, maybe the detectives looking at his particular case, I'm sure they probably don't have enough evidence, but now it becomes more or less of a, oh, they're trying to force us to solve this case. Well, yeah, so I wanted to make that note about the Taft police chief. The grand jury, I guess, looked at it, and he simply got fired for telling a homeless guy, leave town or I'll arrest you. Oh, there's been hundreds of thousands of those in Flower Bluff. Actual assaults and all. So I'll do that one. I wanted to make that note. I got a text last week from a different friend that they could not find Danny. And it was right after I mentioned there were 3 names I gave, but Danny Gill was one who had many altercations. That he was one. I don't want to mention the other one now. The other one is still alive. They all had alcohol problems. But when I got that text right after I mentioned his name on one of the videos, made me wonder, and then last night they found him dead. And just when you look at, if I comment more on the Avery case, what you'll see in that is, even in that particular case, that man Allen, the local law enforcement knew that Allen had raped the woman, but they wanted to get Avery because of personal reasons. And Allen went on and raped other women, and they knew. And even in the first part that I watched again, when they finally exonerated Mr. Avery, he's in prison again. Okay? He's in prison again for a murder. And the cops had planted that vehicle on the salvage yard, and they did it all over again. But the defense attorneys contacted the judge and the others that were involved in the original framing of Mr. Avery. And the defense attorney on the documentary said when he called the judge, he thought the judge would say something like, oh my, we made a mistake and all. The first thing the judge told him is, oh, do you have anything about Allen in my file? Meaning the judge knew. So they all knew that there was a rapist by the name of Allen that did it. This comes out later. They all knew that. And they said, no, but we have another thing. We want to settle the score with Avery because one of our sheriff's deputies wants to put him away. So not only did they violate every law in the book, but they knew Allen was loose and he committed other rapes. Very amazing. The same thing happened with Michael Morton. So you see a degree of sin and corruption, like I'll teach in a minute with Saul. Saul was in the role of almost like a bad cop, just going in, resting. They were all running, all the Christians run. Saul's all out. No concept of, but he's going to get converted in Acts 9. So this is the first rollout, and then I'm going to actually teach him that.